This is episode 155, Becoming Recession-Proof in 2023. Welcome to Alive by Design. My name is Blake Mallon, and we're here to bring you inspiring people, principles, and practices to help you wake up, move toward your meant to, and feel fully alive. Open your mind and let's dive in. Hey guys, before you listen to the podcast, I just want to drop in and say I appreciate you for being here, and I'm super excited about this new Walk With Me series. These are solo episodes where I take some time in the middle of my morning run through the Santa Monica Mountains to share some inspired ideas and thoughts on my mind and heart. If you want to join me for any of these conversations live, you can catch me many mornings on my Facebook page, facebook.com/blakemallon.page. Would love to see you there. Love you guys. Enjoy the episode.
Walk with me. Everything has its season. We've all heard this before. It's true, though. Season, I like that word. Other words that mean similar things: pattern, cycle. And it's the truth. Everything has its season, its pattern, its cycle. Not just the time of our year and the seasons, but our life. If you look at our lifeline, there's seasons of our life. There's seasons of our year. There's seasons of our life. You look throughout history, there's seasons, patterns, cycles. History repeats itself, I believe the saying goes. And I want to talk about seasons as it relates to not just our year, our life, but what's going on in the world. I think it's a relevant time since there's so much conversation about the season we're about to head into. You got some of the greatest minds in the world talking about how winter is coming. And I'm not talking Game of Thrones. Ray Dalio, one of the brightest minds of our time, and he would think when it comes to economics, his whole conversation, latest book, all around the season that's ahead of us. The word recession, probably one of the more common used right now in our media, in our headlines, maybe even in our conversations. And it's not just rhetoric. What's the headline all over the media right now? Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, just those four companies. What was it? 51,000 layoffs? 51,000 people. And you think about the ramifications, not just of those 51,000 and those households and their families, but the economic ripple effect that those higher paid, upper class, 51,000 households we're spending money on that maybe now won't. So there's no doubt that change is coming. Seasons are shifting. What you reap, you shall sow, I believe it goes. And I think understanding the nature of the seasons and the seasons ahead allows us to not just conceptually know what we reap, what we sow, but know when to reap, how to reap, so that as we go into certain seasons, we can sow for us, our family, and our communities, no matter what's ahead. So I want to talk about the seasons, and more specifically the season we're in and the season that we may be headed into with y'all today, and some thoughts on how to be prepared, how to get positioned so that you, we, us all can be in a position to reap. I mean really reap in the season ahead. So we know the year has seasons, right? Depending on where we live in the world, we are maybe closer to that than others. Here in California, we don't have like dramatic seasons, but seasons nonetheless. But I'm not talking about just the seasons of the year, or winter into spring and spring into summer and summer into fall and fall and back to winter. I'm talking about seasons in a much broader effect. Morning.
Morning.
You think about seasons as it relates to our lifeline. Isn't it interesting? You zoom out for a minute and you step out of just your own myopic lens and look through the lens of everybody around us. We all go through seasons of life. If you string out a lifeline, most people go through a season in their early 20s of, let's call it spring. Light, a lot of fun, a lot of curiosity, trying, many things. And if we, sow correctly and learn correctly in our 20s and 30s, when we get into our maybe 50s and 60s, we get to reap the summer. Maybe when we get into our 70s and 80s, and God bless those of us that go beyond, we're in a winter. And it can be a great winter if you set yourself up correctly. But I think most of us, if we're honest in our lifeline, we go through seasons or cycles or patterns. And it's never the exact same, right? We're all different people with different experiences. But I think if you look at a lifeline, it goes through a pretty standard curve for most people. And we look at seasons throughout history. And throughout history, there are patterns, right? There are cycles. And I want to highlight this concept of seasons at a macro level, zooming out beyond our year, even zooming out beyond our life, to seasons of the past. You see, if you study history, it leaves clues. And if you listen to people that spend time, right, digging into the details, thinking critically through, you can learn a lot in a really short time frame of, maybe how some of the clues of the past can be indicative, insightful to where we're going into the future. And that's why there's so much conversation right now when it comes to what season we're potentially headed into. Now, we all have heard the conversations, right? Is recession in front of us? Is it here now? Is it coming? Right? How big or how bad, quote unquote, will this be? Obviously, we're starting to see early indicators, not just the layoffs that are happening at larger companies, the tightening of consumer spending across the board, right? In preparation, for that, interest rates shifting, real estate industry changing, right? All of the different elements that are the signs, right? That are the indicators are starting to move in a direction. Nobody knows for sure where it's going or exactly what it'll look like, but the overall consensus from people paying attention is we're going into a winter. And I want to deconstruct what that could mean for you or for I, and what we should maybe do about that, how we should think about that, and more importantly, how maybe we can position ourselves to take advantage of the seasons that we're going into. Now, I'll warn you up front that I have a different opinion on a winter season, on a recession season than probably most people. And that's not just because, hey, Blake, you're a positive guy or you're an optimist. No, it actually comes from experience, right? In other words, my own experience through similar times. I'll share with you guys a quick personal story. Some of you know my backstory. more deeply than others. Some of you maybe don't know it at all, right? I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19, started, my first company in my early 20s after I was a part of a failed company as a sales representative. The company I was an independent sales representative for went out of business, ended up acquiring the assets of that company that morphed from the ashes of a failure into the birth of something new, and started my journey as an entrepreneur in the health space. And I've always loved being a healthy lifestyle entrepreneur. It's something I enjoy, helping people with their health all across the board, physically, mentally, emotionally. And, spent 5 years building a company from an idea, from a scrappy startup to what most would call a successful company, right? A moderately successful company. And I remember in 2008, right, we had this year running up. I started as an entrepreneur in 1999. That company failed from 2003, 4, 5, right, morphed into starting my own company. 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8 was a grind, was a hustle, was a buildup. But this little idea ended up becoming what most would be called a successful health company. And we ended up actually selling to a large, multi-billion-dollar publicly traded global empire in our channel. And I remember sitting in New York at a celebratory dinner after we had just signed the agreement, and really feeling like this is it. This is the chance. This is what I've worked my life for at that point, from 99 to 2008, almost a decade. And feeling like, wow, this is going to be the doorway to a next chapter, right? This is going to be the next level. Like this is it, right? Not I have made it, but I have made it to a place where I was ready and my partners were ready to really go to where we thought we could, right? Go to where we had dreamed of. And I remember weeks later, and some of you guys might remember, we were at that dinner at the end of 2008, and literally weeks later, do you remember what happened at the end of 2008, for those of you guys tuned in? Weeks later was, the Lehman Brothers collapse, right? Banks going under, complete turmoil. And we went into a really bad, what's the R word? All right, a really bad economic recession. And the months after, we watched the company that we'd spent years building get demolished. We were a high-end premium supplement company, and it was one of the first things that when people retracted their spending, they said, hey, that's something that I'm going to cut right now. And we watched our customer base that we spent years building, cancel to where in a few short months, our sales had plummeted almost 90% of where they were. Years building up, and then months completely collapsing down. And I remember sitting in there going, mixed feelings, right? Feelings of turmoil, feelings of how could this be, feelings of why me, feelings of victimhood, feelings of entitlement, right? Feelings of self-doubt, right? Feelings of all the things that you could imagine we all go through, and like you feel you made it to a point, and then boom, only to find you're right back to what appears to be a starting line. And I remember one specific conversation my partners and I had during this time where we kind of had to have a real talk and be honest with ourselves that our model was not designed for where the economy was at and where it was going. And we could give up, we could fold in the towel, we could close the doors, like many companies did at that time. We were super close to it. I remember sitting there in early 2008, and we were to a point where our sales had plummeted, from what was millions and millions of dollars a month in revenue to $600,000 a month. We were losing $600,000 a month to the bottom line, and we had $600,000 left in the bank. I remember it because it was a 666 that vividly stands out in my mind. And for those of you guys that aren't good at math, that means we were about 1 month away from bankruptcy, out of money. The company we sold to was a big company, but they had egg on their face because they acquired this hyper growth nutrition company that months later was pennies on what it was. So them, the public investors, the public markets, right? Hated what we were doing. It wasn't our fault per se. The world was collapsing, but it was the brutal facts of where we were. So they wrote us off, literally, not just on their time and energy, but literally wrote us off on their financials as a lost investment, leaving us hanging on our own. And I remember in that period where we were on the brink of failure, we asked ourselves a simple question. We said, look, our model is not designed. It wasn't designed for this season. We had built the model. We had designed the model for a premium economy, for where the economy had been, and it was working. And all of a sudden, the seasons changed. And we had to be real with ourselves that our business was not designed to weather that season. And we asked ourselves one question internally that radically changed the trajectory of everything. And that question was, well, how do we redesign our business for the recessionary season? How do we redesign our business for the recessionary consumer? How do we redesign our business for the recessionary entrepreneur? Instead of whining, complaining, getting frustrated, sticking our head in the sand, pretending like it wasn't happening, hoping it would go away, pointing a finger to somebody else, running the other direction, any number of choices, we said, okay, how do we shift for the new season? And that one question led to a variety of discussions, deep searching, right? Tons of ideas from every direction, creativity at its finest, distilling down to a couple key decisions that changed our model, changed the product we were focused on, changed the message we were bringing to the market, changed the value proposition we were giving to a consumer, changed the incentives, right, and campaigns that we put together, changed our brand, changed everything. On the brink of bankruptcy, made a shift. And I can't say it was like an instant, from stalled to 100-mile-an-hour acceleration. It wasn't, but it turned, and energy built, and months started going in a positive direction. And shortly thereafter, it led to what ended up being the greatest, call it momentum season of my entrepreneurial career. And it was a big one. It was 4-year aftermath of consecutive compounded growth. A brink of failure to billions, literally billions of dollars in revenue. Building a brand that quite possibly was the fastest growing company in business, at least in America, post-recessionary time. Maybe one of the greatest turnaround stories or adaptation stories of shifting and accelerating during a recessionary period. So why do I tell this story, right? I tell this story because of the season that we were in and how I feel that it's so similar to the season we're about to go in. And how realizing that in a time of quote unquote recession doesn't have to be a time of fear or retraction, but can actually be a time of acceleration. Everything goes through seasons, but we have to realize that seasons are shifting and we have to be willing to adapt and change in order to maximize or accelerate through the seasons ahead. So why is this relevant here today? Well, if we're going to go into a winter, and if the greatest minds are saying it's coming and it's going to be bigger than ever, I don't know if it is. I don't know if it's not. I don't know if they're right. I don't know if they're wrong. But I think it would be naive to ignore it. Here's a couple thoughts, right, when it comes to the season ahead. First and foremost, I'm an optimist. I'm all for faith. I'm 100% full of hope, maybe to an extreme where some would say it's a positive and a lot of times it's been a negative, but that's me. And I don't think there's any negative energy of being an optimist, having hope and having faith. Have it. Have it. But it's okay to be an optimist and still be prepared. So I think be an optimist, but be prepared. Be a prepared optimist. Meaning it's okay to have faith that it's not going to be all doom and gloom. You don't have to buy into the negativity and fear. But even as we're having faith and optimism, why not be prepared for what may happen? That's called intelligence. That's called smart, right? That's called not being naive or delusional. So I think you got to bring an awareness to it's okay to not buy into the negativity and still prepare yourself. Be a prepared optimist. I think also the intention that you're able to bring into this season has got to be important. See, a lot of times when it comes to recession, the feeling that people go through is also a cycle. A lot of times we get hit with the headlines and 51,000 people just laid off. This may happen. I might be next. And the first feeling we gravitate to is a feeling of fear. And fear for most people freezes, right? What do people do when they get afraid? They freeze, right? Or if they don't freeze, they run away, right? They flee. Put their head in the sand. And people go through these cycles when it comes to recession. For a lot of times we stop and we freeze in fear of what do we do first. And it goes through a period of fear and scarcity and until a need gets so big where you have to end up fighting your way out. So I think shifting your intention and realizing that we don't have to be afraid, we don't have to flee, but we can start to be prepared now, and realizing that a time of recession can be a time of acceleration. Let me give you different language and different words to help you make the shift. When I hear recession, what I hear is a greater need. A greater need, right? As people have less, as there is less out there, less resources, as there is a restriction, to me, that's an increasing need. There is a greater need out there. There's more people in need out there. Let me give you another word for need: demand. And I use the word demand because everybody's heard in business, break it down to simple form, supply and demand. The greater the demand, the greater the opportunity to supply. So if the need is going up in recession, the demand is going up in recession, that means the opportunity to meet that need, to meet that demand, increases. So if we're able to get in a position where we can help be a solution at a time where there is a greater need, well, that's a greater opportunity. How's that for a shift in the intention? Goes back to my story, goes back to my experience. We were able to provide a solution, right? And communicate it in a way that was received at a time where it was really needed, and it created an acceleration. A huge opportunity, a change in my life, my family's life, my kids' life. Thousands of other people's lives, maybe more. Right? So we got to realize that there is opportunity in the recession. And instead of going through the cycle of, I'm going to be afraid and I'm going to freeze or I'm going to retract, I'm going to put my head in the sand, knowing that at some point, if you do that, your need's going to get so great, you're going to have to ignite an ambition anyway. You're going to have to ignite a desire anyway. You're going to have to, eventually move forward anyway. You can't put the blinders on. Why not use a vision of what's coming for tomorrow, a vision of a greater need, a vision of an opportunity to meet that vision to create an urgency in you today, an ambition in you today, it is desire in you today. In other words, if you know there's going to be an opportunity to reap in the future, and that opportunity to reap could be bigger than it's ever been, is what economists are saying. Why not sow now? Why not sow now? Why not sow greater than you've ever sowed before so you can reap greater than you've ever reaped before with an exponential effect because of the timing and the need that we're able to help and make an impact? You guys, the great ones, they're able to use a vision of tomorrow to create an urgency today, a clarity in what's to come, to create an initiative, a desire, a fire today. Yes, be practical, right? Make sure you have a financial runway. If you need to Save. If you need to cut back. Give yourself the time and the breathing room to have a runway, a trajectory to go. And then for all you entrepreneurs out there, or all you that ready and wanting and have the feeling to make the leap, maybe now's the time. Get in a position where you're able to provide a solution for where the world is and where the world is going. And if you can get in a position to provide a solution for the needs that people have and the needs that are going to grow, you have the ability to accelerate. Well, Blake, what are those needs? You know what they are. Some of the greatest needs, I think, right now that are so aware that I think a realignment of our health, I don't think that's going to go away coming off pandemic. I think a focus on not just our physical health, but our mental health. How prevalent is that conversation today and will only increase as fear continues to grow? Right? How can you get in that lane? Anything that gives a family an ability to have their economic resources flow, that's recession independent, is going to accelerate. Anything that has to do with connection and community and bringing people together that we've been starving for in the couple years is going to continue to be a theme. And you guys, that's not it. There's a laundry list of needs people have today and the needs that are going to grow and get greater in the winter ahead and the recession ahead. So ask yourself, where is the world going? And how can you get in a position to provide a real solution to people? And if you do those things that I'm saying, if you shift your intention to realizing this can be a season of acceleration, if you keep your optimism, but realize you got to prepare, if you're practical about your finances and where you're at to give yourself a runway, and then if you're creative and create yourself in a lane that provides a solution for the needs of today and the needs you think will come tomorrow, this can not only be a time of acceleration for your family, it can be one of the greatest acceleration seasons of your life. And if these thought leaders are right, and if it's going to be the greatest winter, well, then to me, that means this could be the season of the greatest acceleration. And that's why it's worth understanding that everything has its seasons, not just in our year or in our life, but in the seasons of history. And now's the time to sow. Check out the sun. Eyes coming through. So, a couple thoughts. And I hope that today's conversation resonates. Every time you hear the word recession in the days, the weeks, the months to come, I hope this conversation resonates. Every time you start to get that trigger of fear because you're reading a headline of this layoff or that layoff, and you're worried about what happens to you or what could happen, make the shift that this is a time of opportunity and acceleration. Follow the checklist that I gave today, right? Not just philosophically, but practically, and make sure your intentions are aligned. Make sure your beliefs are aligned. Make sure you're taking care of your finances so you have that runway. But ask yourself creatively, are you in a position to capitalize? And if not, how can you make the shift to be so? There's opportunity all around. And all of it comes down not just to you, but the greater of an impact you can be to others, contribute to others, be a solution to others, the less you'll have to worry about your own personal state, and the more abundance will flow your way. Here's a time with whatever season is ahead, whatever winter is coming, however cold it may be, that may all of you, all of us together, flourish in a way that is meaningful and makes an impact to others, as that's what it's all about. Till the next time we walk together, take care, everybody.
Hey guys, one last thing. I'm super excited that this new podcast, Alive by Design, just went live. You see, I designed the show to bring you inspired thoughts and fascinating conversations with the world's most impactful people, to provide transformative principles and practices to help you wake up, move toward your meant to, and feel fully alive. And I'd love for you to help me spread the word now. Simply subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on this platform right now. So if I've ever given you value, please do me this personal favor and go subscribe now. And if you found today's episode helpful in any way, make sure you share this with at least one friend today. You have the power right now to change someone's day. So send them a text message with a link to alivebydesign.com, or simply copy and paste the link right from this podcast platform. Who's one person you know right now that you want to see succeed, that you want to see grow, that you want to see feel more alive? Shoot them a text with your largest takeaway from today and be a light in their day. And if you were referred here by a friend, make sure you shoot them a text back and say thank you. I'd love to hear from you directly on what you got from today's podcast. So if you're up for it, drop by my Instagram @BlakeMallon and shoot me a DM. And as always, thank you for showing up. I'm grateful for you, and I hope our time together today in some small way helped you feel a little more alive. Until next time.